Let me introduce you to our panel this afternoon. With me is Ian Murray from Labour, Kirsty Blackman from the SNP, Alistair Carmichael from the Liberal Democrats, and from the Conservatives, David Morris. First time he joins us today, so welcome to you. David, I will begin with you. Alistair at Prime Minister's Question Time today, we had Angus Robertson raising quite a pertinent point. What happens if everything goes wrong in Northern Ireland? What does that mean for Brexit, and what does it mean for the triggering of Article 50?
Well, again, this is very uncharted waters. There is legislation in place to actually compensate for what is going on here, and hopefully within the next 7 days, both parties will come together, all parties will come together, in the sake of the whole of Northern Ireland and sort this issue out. What would happen after that if nothing happens? There would be an election. The Brexit issue, who knows? It remains to be seen.
Alistair Carmichael, it is an interesting point, isn't it, that if you have a situation where, in effect, you don't have a functioning administration in Northern Ireland, therefore they can't be consulted, therefore can you go ahead and trigger Article 50?
Well, I mean, as a member of the Brexit Select Committee, I meet businesses, local interest groups, all sorts, on a regular basis, and the thing that I hear from them time and time again is we know what is going to have to happen. We really need to get on and do it because, in particular, for the economic interests, this continuing uncertainty is enormously damaging. Now, I think actually it's incumbent on us to say to those politicians who are part of the administration in Belfast, this is another level of responsibility for you. The reason why we have come to where we are in Northern Ireland is this basic lack of trust between the parties and transparency within the government. This is another reason why you guys have got to get your act together, because what you're doing is not just affecting Northern Ireland or even all of Ireland, it is affecting the whole of the United Kingdom. And what is bad for the economy of the whole of the United Kingdom will be particularly bad for the economy of Northern Ireland.
Kirsty Blackman, if things go wrong in Northern Ireland and we end up having a situation whereby there have to be new elections, does that mean that the triggering of Article 50 has to be delayed?
Obviously, we hope that won't happen. We hope parties in Northern Ireland will be able to get round the table and get this sorted out. But I don't think you can have meaningful consultation with Northern Ireland and with their representatives without actually having a government in place and with having elections coming up. So I don't think Article 50 should be triggered in the event that things don't sort themselves out in Northern Ireland.
To some extent, Ian Murray, this is the law of unintended consequences. Despite everything we've been thinking about Brexit for the past few months, probably no one anticipated that it could be Northern Ireland that could cause real problems.
But actually, that's the point the Labour Party made when we had our Opposition Day debate on this very issue about Article 50 and the timetable just a few months ago, because we were saying you can't factor in events. We've got the French elections, we've got the German elections, they'll all dictate the process. We've now seen, as you've said, an unforeseen event in Northern Ireland, which is not just about triggering Article 50 and Brexit, but there's a much wider constitutional issue about the peace process, about the people of Northern Ireland, about holding the Stormont Assembly together, about the future of Northern Ireland, and about making sure the past can be dealt with as well. So there's a whole plethora of issues here, and really I agree with Alistair Carmichael. They need to try and find a way to sort this out, because, to be quite frank, Article 50 and the triggering of it will be the least of their problems if they can't get a functioning administration together.
Let's stick with matters Brexit. David, I'll come back to you. I don't know if you're aware that one of your government colleagues, the Immigration Minister, Robert Goodwin, was appearing before the Lords today, and he has suggested that after Brexit, European nationals could be charged to come and work in this country, that companies that were sponsoring them could perhaps have to be levied with a fee of about £1,000 for European nationals to come and work within the UK. What do you make of that?
Well, I must admit I'm not aware of that particular point about Robert being in the Lords saying this, but I'm sure that the grown-ups amongst us all in Parliament would like to see, if there's any immigration into the UK, a controlled form of immigration, not an open-door policy of what we've got now. Would there be a tariff? I don't know. I think at the end of the day, depending on what language is used and how Brexit progresses, I'm sure that we will be in the European club of some sort, because, the fact is we are leaving the European Union, but not Europe.
Alistair Carmichael, somehow I think you've got a different take on this.
It just gets worse with every day that passes, doesn't it? Every week we're here, we're saying we need to hear more from the government, we need to hear more from the government, and then when we do eventually hear something from them, it is something that is clearly half-baked, is not supported by any sort of evidence, and actually, if anything, makes the situation worse. Robert Goodwill is not really to blame here. There is a massive vacuum into which he politically has been dropped. The person who needs to take control, give direction to this, tell the country and to tell Parliament what she intends to achieve, if not necessarily how she is going to achieve every part of it, is Theresa May. It is her lack of leadership and her lack of strategy that is leaving us in this dreadful position at the moment.
Kirsty Blackman, you may not agree with the policy, but if you decide that you're going to leave the European Club, there is a logic that you can make the rules as to who does and who does not come to work here, and whether you want to charge them, in effect, for that privilege.
Well, we're really clear that we want to remain members of the single market, and you cannot do that without accepting free movement. I think having the tariffs is a pretty ridiculous idea, because if you think particularly about small business owners, how are they going to afford to pay this money to have people come and work on their farms or on their fishing boats or in any of these kind of small enterprises? I think this is a ridiculous tack to take, and again, it is another half-baked proposal. I agree with Alistair.
Ian Murray.
Well, there's no plan for Brexit. I mean, it's as if we've got a government and a Prime Minister who've taken back control of this EU car, but they're driving it from the passenger seat. They're all over the road. They've no coherence, they've no policy. And this was a point I made at PMQs in the Chamber this afternoon, David. I said quite clearly that whilst they don't have a plan and whilst they're flailing around with all these half-baked ideas about EU nationals that are verging on xenophobic and verging on racist, they're just pushing the union further and further apart, and nobody will forgive the Conservative Party if this Brexit gamble that they've taken with the country splits the United Kingdom apart.
Change of topic now, and briefly, health has dominated Prime Minister's Question Time today. It is dominating politics down south at the moment. Fully aware that health is a devolved issue. But first of all, David Morrison, and briefly for these answers, please. Is it one of those things that whether we live in England, Scotland, Wales or Northern Ireland, we now need cross-party agreement and a cross-party commission on how we deal with health and social care?
I think, looking at what's been said in the Chamber today, the Prime Minister has acknowledged that there are problems with the health service as it currently stands. We've all known that in the political spheres, all of us have for a very long time. However, it's how we manage it from here on in. We always have a spike in winter, it is a fact, but this particular time there has been more sort of, shall we say, not just politics at play, but more concern from the public, and I think that should be addressed.
Brief answers on that same question from the three of you. Alistair Carmichael first.
The problem is acute in England, you can see that at the moment, but let's not be too smug. The same demographics that are providing the challenge in England are also a challenge in Scotland. You see accident and emergency targets in Scotland being missed for the last 5 months. We need the same sort of approach. They need the same cross-party consensus-building approach that I was pleased to see the Prime Minister took on from my colleague Norman Lamb in the Chamber today.
Kirsty.
We do have the same demographic challenges, and we are working to beat those. We've made huge systemic changes within the NHS. So the health and social care boards that we've got are about reducing that issue with delayed discharges. We're working on it far faster than England is.
Final briefly.
The Audit Scotland report in Scotland 5 months ago said it was the worst state of the NHS report since devolution. And what we did try to do in the last Parliament was bring a cross-party consensus together on health and social care in England and Wales. And just by the time that Andy Burnham, who was the Health Secretary, had walked out the room, the Conservatives had produced a poster called the death tax when there was agreement already made in the room. If we're going to have consensus on this, and we do need consensus and parties working together, there needs to be trust that the parties will take this forward with all good faith.
I'm sure